Should you be more opinionated as a content creator? Hey, I'm John Santiago, and in this episode of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky, I speak with Tom Kuegler. He's a creator who excels at making bold statements through his content. And in this episode, we talk about that, but you'll also learn more about his personal story. You'll find out how struggling to build a traditional career after graduating college put Tom on the path to becoming a creator, the brutal sport he competed in that taught him valuable lessons still relevant to him today, how finding success in blogging translated to success in video, the impact that travel, in particular in the Philippines, has had on his life, and why Tom believes it's important that creators think long and hard about giving back to their audiences. All that and more on this episode of the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky. Tom Kuegler is the creator behind the YouTube channel Finding Tom, with close to 150,000 subscribers at the time of this podcast. Tom has created videos around a host of subjects, but the topic that gets the most of his attention on his channel these days is his deep appreciation for the Philippines. Now, aside from vlogs, Tom is also an accomplished blogger. Tom has more than 50,000 followers on Medium. He's also the founder of the Medium publication, the Post-Grad Survival Guide, which has over 40,000 readers. And aside from Medium, Tom has also earned bylines from publications such as HuffPost, Elite Daily, and Thought Catalog. And it is my pleasure to welcome Tom Kuegler to the Videocraft Show presented by Video Husky. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Yeah, no, John, thank you so much for having me. I think it's going to be a great conversation and, thank you for that flattering intro and I'm down to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to chat with you. I'm always excited to like chat with anybody who is creating stuff online, and obviously like that is why this podcast exists. And but I want to start at a different place. I really want to start with you. Let's go back to when you graduated college, cuz in doing my research on you, it seems like when you finished college and you tried to enter like the traditional workforce, that is where this whole journey for you and where you are in your life today began. So like take me back there to that moment of graduating from university. Where did you go?
Yeah, so that's there's a lot to unpack there. That's probably one of the most um, stressful times of my life when I graduated college. Not for any particular reason with like jobs or anything like that. It was more so because I had Crohn's disease and I was about to go have a major surgery on my small intestine. So I had Crohn's disease really bad from sophomore year of college to senior year of college, and I had it after school as well. And I was taking up all of these different medicines for it, and I just had intense stomach pain like every single day, like this stabbing pain that would just come out of nowhere, like every like 30 minutes to an hour sometimes. And then all of a sudden I'd feel it for like 30 seconds, like this sharp pain. Like I'd have to stop everything I did and like freaking, hold my stomach for a while. After taking all these medicines like Humira and stuff, it got so bad that even the medicines weren't helping. So the only logical thing that we could do after that was to go to the doctors and or go to a surgeon, and actually he would remove the part of my small intestine that was, you know, charred or really affected. And so Crohn's disease, if you don't know what it is, it just makes your intestines inflame. It causes inflammation in your intestines, and it causes the opening of your intestines to shrink. And so when food's trying to pass through, you have this incredible pain, because there's a small opening, and it's really affecting your intestines really bad. And so I got surgery about a month after I graduated college, and while everybody else was out sort of like, and this surgery isn't like 100% like you're going to survive. Like my friend had the same exact surgery that I got. It's called a small bowel resection, and she
Mhm.
almost like I think she went into cardiac arrest at one point after her surgery. They had to go back in and make sure that they stitched together the small intestine well enough. So I'm going down a rabbit hole, but I was going through a really tough time in my life after school, and while I was sitting in an a hospital bed recovering for a month, couldn't even walk, really hitting the morphine button into every 5 seconds, or every 6 minutes or whatever. Um, Everybody else was out traveling, having fun, getting jobs, and getting started on their life. And I remember feeling very, very lost at that moment in time. So I'll go ahead and I'll pause there. And if you have anything you want to, sort of circle back on, I'll feel free. I'll go for it.
No, feel free to continue on, honestly. Like just keep going there. The story is pretty incredible.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, after I sort of had that surgery, it took me about a month to recover. I remember my brother was here and he would like take me outside and yeah, because you have to walk, like you have to get used to walking again. You have to sort of like like think in your mind every couple hours, I'm going to get outside, I'm going to walk. And I just literally walk. I didn't even walk far. I walked over to the next house and then I walked back. And I had to like hold on to my brother, because like my stomach was so bad that I couldn't even like stand up straight. It took me a while to sort of get over that. And so yeah, just a really intense surgery. It was like $50,000, but my dad's insurance was so great that it covered all the expenses, and everything, thankfully. And so, so there I am after school watching everybody be successful and traveling, going on road trips, and I'm, sitting here like, what am I doing? And so I tried to get a job I actually went down to Florida. I love Florida. I had some friends who lived in Florida. I worked at Disney World on an internship in 2014. I graduated in 2015, and I said I'm going to go back down to Florida and stay with a couple friends, and basically, well, actually, not a couple friends, a Filipino friend. I
Okay.
used to work with her at Disney World. Yeah, so this is a cool thing that will be interesting too. Is like the reason why I'm interested in the Philippines at all is because in Disney World, my manager, well, not really my manager, she was our coordinator, who she was a Filipina, and like every time at like lunchtime and stuff, she would talk to me about the Philippines, and I knew that she was from the Philippines, and she would like put her adobo in the oven or in the microwave, and then it would like cause the whole room to smell amazing, and I'd be like, what's that? And then I'd try it, and I would be like, whoa, this is really amazing. And sometimes she would have over like the cast members to her house, and we would all like have like a cookout and stuff, and like it was like we're sort of like a family. And so she sort of became like my really good friend, sort of like a second mom. I was, like, and I learned a lot about the Philippines through, interacting with her. And so I actually stayed with her, in one of her extra rooms in her house with the thought that after like a month or two, I'd have a job and then I'd be able to like go off and do my own thing. And so I ended up like getting a job waiting tables. I did that job for like 2 weeks, and then I was like, nah, this isn't for me at all. This restaurant is a complete mess. They don't know what they're doing. This is like hell, basically. And I know hell. I've worked at Disney World, okay? You know what I mean? Like, I worked at Disney World in the middle of the summertime. I know what that is.
Oh my
So I said,
gosh.
it's the same for me. I don't, you know. And then I went to work at Panera Bread because that was like the only job I could find. I was like, I got to get some sort of job around here, and I was making like, $8 an hour, like making salads and stuff. And and about after like 4 weeks of that, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I could do this either. I just feel so defeated. I have a degree. I've gone through all this crap. All my friends are getting jobs in big cities, and what am I doing wrong? And so there was like this part of me where I was like, I want to start writing online. When I worked at Disney World, I actually filled out journals every day about like what happened in my life. My sister sent me journals, and she was like, "Tom, you want to remember all this stuff, so write it all down." And so I filled out a whole journal, about 100 pages after like 8 months, and I loved it. Journaling was just such a just beautiful thing for me to do because I could get out my thoughts. I knew why I was upset or sad or angry. I could ruminate on that, and then I could not like spew my anger towards somebody else. I'm giving it to the page, and now I understand that I'm angry about something, and then I can deal with it on my own. And so like I recommend everybody journal, by the way, but like for me, I fell in love with writing by doing that. And so I was like, why don't I just like go online and freelance write? And so that's when I got started freelance writing. And I'll pause there too because I've been going on for too long now, John. So yeah.
Honestly, it's incredible because the last guest that I had previous week, Mark Wooding, he's behind this brilliant YouTube channel that I'm not sure but you probably would like his content, called After School. he illustrates a lot of these like philosophical talks and speeches and whatnot into and again into illustrations. So it's really interesting to just hear your journey here about this. And he was somebody who, when I asked him the first question about the origins of his creativity, he told me his whole life story in literally like,
There
10
you go.
minutes or whatnot. And it was just, it's incredible. Like, so the one thing that I want to touch on there, in regards to your story, like, were you at all creative when you were younger, like before you had moved down to Florida and started journaling? Were there any moments early on in your life where you were exploring your creativity at all?
Yes, sir. Many. And I'm happy you asked that. It's a good question because when I went to Germany, you can see behind me right here, there's this little, Germany box of pictures of my trip to Germany when I was, 12 or 13. I don't really know how old I was. It might have been 11 or 12. I know that. And so when we went there, my dad had a video camera. We went for 3 weeks in the middle of the summertime, and I loved it. That's when I started to like traveling. And my dad had a video camera, and I picked up his video camera and I started to like just film with it. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I thought I had just discovered like, the fountain of youth or something, or like I just discovered this new technology. Like, I remember like filming the flowers. I was like really interested in like the like close-ups of like different things and stuff. And so I there's many videos of me just like filming random stuff that we have on tape still. And my dad filmed everything, and we have like hours of footage from that trip still, which is amazing. And so that's when I knew that I liked to make videos. And then when I was in middle school, like maybe a couple years later, I made these like funny videos with my friends. Um, we made this horror movie called The Big Big Hairy Thing, and it was about like this monster that lived in my house or something called The Big Big Hairy Thing. I don't know why we called it that, but it was so funny, and we just had a lot of fun doing that. But I remember in freshman year in high school, I actually made a video for my English class. I had made videos for a little while, and it was about the Odyssey, about this, the Odyssey. It's a famous Greek book. Um,
The Iliad.
and we made this. Yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so yeah, the Iliad. So we went outside, and we filmed this video. We edited it on my computer, and we showed it to the class, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it. They loved it so much that they wanted to watch it again after
Wow.
lunch. And so we watched it again after lunch, and then it actually got broadcast on like we had like this school like morning show or something, and it got broadcast on our school morning show. It's like, I don't know how many kids, 2,000 kids or something. So I walked around feeling like, $1 million that day. I was just a freshman, and I actually won Student of the Month for like that film that I made. So yeah, I've loved making videos ever since I was young. So yeah.
So I'm going back to here to when you were in college. Like, what did you major in?
Um, yeah, so I majored in marketing in college. I actually went to school originally for film. I went to a school after high school. I, was thinking, what am I going to do? Or actually, during high school, I was thinking, what am I going to do? What do I want to major in? And I actually decided that I was going to major in film. And I went to school in Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida, for one
Mm.
semester to go study film there. And that was just a really fun experience. Another real big moment, of my life that I will always look back on and smile. And but after about like a couple months there, I felt really sort of homesick, and I missed wrestling. I used to wrestle in high school. I missed wrestling, and I decided to transfer schools to go to a school called Messiah College in Pennsylvania, who had a really good wrestling program. And I went to go wrestle there, midway through, and I changed my major from film to marketing because they did not have a film major at Messiah. And so I thought that maybe marketing would be a more stable career choice or something. There's more
Yeah.
jobs in marketing and film. It's like it's so specialized. Like, how am I gonna? I can't just go down to Baltimore City and go get a job in film. Like, it doesn't work that way. I got to go to Hollywood or like some other, sort of film hotspot, right? So, that was my thinking back in the day.
Yeah, and the irony now, like you're doing YouTube, I mean, you're just like an all-around renaissance man of a content creator. You're doing video, you're doing writing, all kinds of things. And it's like we're gonna touch on this even more, like I think in this conversation about, you know, the idea or the old idea of like, oh, I have to go to Los Angeles to Hollywood in order to make it in film or in video. And, here you are doing the things that you're doing. But I want to now touch on, since you brought it up, you, you mentioned that you spent a lot of time in your life wrestling. Like when did you start wrestling?
Yeah, so I started wrestling when I was in sixth grade. So I think I actually around the same time that I came back from Germany, right there. And yeah, I remember like the first practice my dad brought me to, we actually like started wrestling because I was sort of bullied as a kid, and my dad sort of wanted me to do something like just in case like, it got a little more violent or something and I could like defend myself or whatever. And wrestling is actually a great thing to practice if for self-defense. But I never needed to use it or anything like that. But it is also a sport that my dad heard a lot about, like it gives you good values and stuff, all that great stuff. So I started wrestling in sixth grade and I fell in love with it from the start, man. I went to this practice. I remember like there's a gym full of kids. There was tons of mats all over the place. It was like I was swimming in like just like mats and wrestling and all this stuff. And I remember just like grappling with my partner and like just being like, this is so different from like every other sport that I've ever done before, but it's so much fun too. Like it's just really sort of like it's like this brand new thing that I sort of fell in love with right away. So yeah, I started in sixth grade.
Wrestling's like a super punishing sport too. Like I remember when I was in high school, I didn't wrestle. I played football for like one year, but then I left. I didn't really have much resilience back when I was a teenager, honestly. But wrestling to me, like anytime I would come across and hang out with the guys who were on my high school wrestling team, I mean, I was always just kind of intimidated by them because they were very, I mean, physically, like they were probably in better condition than like the basketball players or the football players or any other athletes on campus. And so I wonder how how much of that had an impact on just the way that you approach life. I didn't know this. You were alluding to earlier when we started your story was that you had Crohn's disease. And I imagine like, grappling and with somebody on the mat, there's a lot of chaos in that, right? And so I imagine and I wonder if your experiences in wrestling helped you with that and even helped you move forward and have resilience in tough moments in your life.
Yeah, so that's a I I keep saying that's a great question. But no, it was almost a disadvantage to me in terms of the Crohn's because I'm so used to pain that like I kept having this horrible pain in my stomach and like I could just sort of deal with it. But the problem was I should have maybe like complained about it earlier. I should have been more like, okay, this is on a scale of 1 to 10. This pain ain't a 7 or an 8. It's a freaking 10. All right, let's get something going here. I should have been like that. And so, like being so used to like the wrestling is a painful sport. It is physically painful. It is even more mentally painful. And when you walk into a wrestling tournament and you see all the madness and the chaos and the testosterone and the sweat and the sometimes blood, and the yelling, and it's just everything seems like the stakes are so much higher than they really are. That is a heck of a thing to deal with as a kid, and it really builds your sort of like tolerance for doing hard things, doing crazy things like that. And so, yeah, my experience wrestling, even in middle school, significantly sort of built this structure for how much I could handle later on in my life, and built my resilience to levels that I can't even begin to explain to you. And a lot of that stuff happens in competition, but for me, most of that stuff happened in the wrestling room when you're getting your butt kicked by some kid who's been doing this for 10 years more than you, and they know all the techniques, and you're literally just getting just whooped for like 2 hours and sweating and doing stairs. And like, you're right, man. Like wrestlers were always, you know, for me personally, wrestling was the hardest sport I ever did, and I did a lot of them. But football is awesome too. It's a hard sport too for different reasons. But wrestling was the most mentally demanding thing I've ever done. Much more mental, in my opinion, than physical. And it's pretty darn physical, so that
Yeah.
shows you how crazy it really was for me. And yeah, I owe a lot of my success today uh, to wrestling, for sure. And I that was probably one of the best decisions my dad ever made, was to throw me into a wrestling room, for sure.
So did you have like were you curious at all at were you curious about wrestling at all, or was it just your dad was like, "Hey, just try this."
Well, John, it's so funny. I mean, the only thing that I knew about wrestling was like the WWE,
Yeah,
back in the
man.
day. So me and my dad used to watch. Yeah, me and my dad
You
used
were
to watch
watching
Kurt
like The Rock
Angle
and
and
Stone Cold.
Stone
Oh,
Cold.
Kurt Angle, exactly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So like I like originally thought that like, oh, like dad, like really? Like you, like I'm gonna go take a steel chair to somebody, or I'm thinking that in my 11-year-old brain. I'm like, what do you mean wrestling? Like they you could get hurt with wrestling. But he's like, no, no, that's not real wrestling, Tom. Like wrestling is like, different. This is completely safe. It's not like that. It's not violent or anything like that. Even though wrestling is sort of violent, but it's not like that. It's not like you're gonna get hurt. And so I had to get that through my head. And so yeah, that was like all I knew about wrestling, back then. And then so when I stepped onto the mat and saw what they were doing, I was like, this is like just like a totally different thing. And we had my dad has this Navy SEAL friend that used to go to our church, and
Wow.
he told my dad, he's like, yeah, get Tom into wrestling. Tom would really love wrestling. And so I actually, still love that man. I actually ended up coaching at my old high school years later, and he came to a few of our dual meets, and so that man, put his mark on my life for sure. But yeah, that's all I knew about wrestling. So yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you learned from that that friend of your dad's who was an ex Navy SEAL? I imagine like being a Navy SEAL, like there's an intensity there with that man. So I'm curious, like what were some of the things that he taught you?
It's so funny. Like, you would think that, right? You would think that he'd be like this intense guy, staring holes through you, sort of like tough and strong and stuff. But he was actually just a really chill guy. Um, it just seemed like he was so in control of his body. It seemed like he was just like not afraid of anything, but he was just super calm, chilled, relaxed, and actually a really nice, kind man. But one thing that I remember learning from him was when I was a sophomore in high school, obviously you want to win a state championship in wrestling, in high school wrestling. That's like the top of the pyramid. That's like the thing that everybody shoots for. That's like, in the NBA winning a net like like the NBA title. So for me, I was actually at my regional finals match going to face this kid that beat me earlier in the year. Regional finals is the step before states. And if you place high in regionals, you have a really good seed at states and you have a really good shot at winning a state title. So there's a lot on the line here. And so my friend, my Navy SEAL friend actually wrote up like a a report for me to look at, dissecting this person's game and what he thought I should do to beat this person. And so I studied that thing, and I went out there and I felt so relaxed on that night. I said, I got nothing to lose. This kid already beat me before. I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have a little bit of fun. And I went out there and I beat that kid. And that kid beat me pretty good before. 8-2 or 8-3 or something. That's pretty good. He beat me pretty good. I beat him 8-2 or something like that. And that night, and I was so fired up about it. But what I learned from that was that there's preparation is super key. Obviously, preparation can make you feel less nervous, and also that like literally just anything is possible. You just gotta like when you study something well enough, when you study something hard enough, there's always weaknesses in somebody else's game, or always sort of opportunities in whatever at whatever you want to do, whether that's business or your work or like anything like that. So I learned that lesson that night. Like it actually is possible. I did something I thought I wouldn't be able to do, and it's because I had this plan and someone helped me. And so yeah, that's what I learned. That's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned from him. Totally, totally super valuable. You know, you can't put a price on it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's incredible, man. Like
Yeah.
preparation is so much of a lot of things that we want to achieve, as you know, even in terms of content creation, right? Like if you can prepare accordingly, like even me preparing for this podcast, like I do my research, you know, I try to get to know the guest as much as I possibly can, but still have some level of like mystery there, so that when I enter into the conversation with the guest, that I'm still finding out things. You know, I don't want to have it be completely, I don't want to have like the curtain fully like pulled. But yeah, preparation 100% is so critical there. Tom, I want
Yeah.
to ask you about and go back to um, just where you were when you moved down to Florida, tried to find a job there, and then you were deciding to go the route of freelance writing. Like take me back there and that decision and what transpired.
Yeah, so I remember I basically like decided to go on upwork.com one night and try to find freelance writing jobs. And I remember applying to this one job. This person wanted me to write a 5,000 word ebook, you know, for her, and she was paying me $100 for it. So I
Oh
was
my
like, all right,
god.
that sounds great. Let's do it. You know, right?
I know what you're talking about,
It's
man. Like
horrible.
I've been through the Upwork, the bottom rungs of Upwork in the past, but I know that it
Yeah.
also is like quite a good platform to, you know, you just have to like attack it the right way to find like high quality clients. But you can get stuck
Yeah.
with like some people who want too much from you for way too less.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I was over the moon about it though, John. You know, weirdly enough, I was like, all right, this is great. I get to make $100. You know, what would you call that? A C note? I get to make a C note from, you know, from writing in my pajamas. And so I was like, let's do it. And I wrote that ebook for her in record time. And I turned it into her, and I was like so nervous that she wouldn't like it. And she was like, Tom, I love this. I love all the examples you put in there. You did a great job. You know, I just funded the rest of the, you know, the payment for the job, and thank you so much. We'll keep in touch. And after that, I was just hooked. I was like, I gotta do this more. I was like, this is so awesome. I don't need to like go anywhere. I don't need to commute to work. I can wake up and start to work. I don't need to like do anything. I don't even need to take a shower. I just need to start writing. And so, you know, that was about 4 months after I graduated. I'd been looking for work and I had my surgery and stuff. And I just fell into freelance writing big time. And I remember talking to my mom about it. And my mom is great. She's done so many great things for me. She's given me great advice. But I remember she like wanted me to not freelance write. She tried to like push me away from freelance writing. And she was like, Tom, I think it'd be a better choice if you worked at Panera and you sort of worked your way up to get into corporate, because they could tell you got a bachelor's degree, right? Like you're going to work your way up. And that was the plan originally. But I was like, I just don't want to do this. I want to be in control of my own thing. And so, yeah, that's how I got into freelance writing. And, you know, for the next couple months after that, I was making like, you know, maybe, I don't know how much I was making, like 200, $300 a week, you know, writing
Mhm.
stuff. And it wasn't that much, but I was just over the moon that I could make money doing this, you know? So, yeah.
How did you stumble upon this world? You know, were there particular people who you saw doing this? I mean, did you scour the internet and just and find, oh wait, you can actually make money and earn a living online by writing? Like, were there anybody that you came across that kind of inspired you to go this route?
Yeah, John, I'm trying to think about that. I don't think that there was, honestly. Um, you know, when I was in college, one of my assignments for the semester was to create a blog. and to like write a blog post like twice a week for this particular blog and then see what comes of it. And I ended up getting a D on that blog, D on that assignment. Weirdly enough, it's like, geez, what was I thinking? I wrote about everything under the moon. I wrote about First Take, my favorite talk show in the morning. I watched First Take with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. back in the day, and I wrote about the importance of debate. I wrote about just like things that I learned, and my professor was like, "Yeah, Tom, I think you missed the mark here," and he gave me a D on it. And I was like, "Well, thanks, dude." It's like it would have been nice if you would have given me some like tips every now and then about my blog or some feedback, but thanks. And so that's basically all I knew about writing online. I weirdly enough, I can't think of one person who inspired me to freelance write. Now, for blogging, that's something else entirely. There was one person that I can point to with travel blogging in particular, writing about places you've traveled that inspired me. And that person, was Adventurous Kate. And she was awesome. I remember finding her blog on like Pinterest or something. And I was searching how to monetize a blog online. And she talked about how she gets paid to travel and how she makes money from her blog. And I was hooked.
Hmm.
I was like, I want to do that. Please let me do that. And so, we're getting into further on in my story here, and I'll just tease it before I let you, ask me another question. But basically, I decided, I think it was like, so I graduated in May of 2015. I started freelancing on August of 2015, and then I freelanced until, actually for the next couple years. But around April of 2016, almost a year after I graduated, I was like, I want a travel blog. I want to start one. And I was like, I've been in Orlando for a while. I sort of feel aimless here. I don't really think that this is my home. I'm just working online. I can work wherever I want. So why don't I go wherever I want? So that started to come into my mind a little bit. And I had a car, and I was like, why don't I go to San Francisco, visit my best friend, stay with him for a few months, see what California is all about, and sort of like tour the United States along the way. Stay 1 week in Austin, Texas, stay 1 week in New Orleans, stay 1 week in Tucson, and then sort of make my way across the country. And I was like, that would be the perfect time for me to be a travel blogger. And you can't be a travel blogger without traveling, right? So that's
Yeah.
how I start, right? So I started to travel. I actually, I think in May, I think it was May or early June. It was early June of 2016. I decided to go off on my own, and I left my really good friend in Orlando to go and see my best friend in San Francisco, and time of my life for sure. And I blogged about it, and I also freelanced, and that paid for my everyday expenses and stuff like that. So I'll stop there for a second.
That's incredible, man. It's funny. I've talked to quite a few travel vloggers, travel creators, on this podcast now, and I myself have traveled quite a bit. And it's interesting to me that like your journey when you started traveling kind of coincided with my journey when I started traveling too, because I actually left the country for the first time on my own and started traveling back in 2016 as well. I went to Europe and like just backpacked everywhere for like several
Nice.
months. And so it's really fascinating to hear. It's almost like our journeys kind of overlapped here, but I'm a little bit more jealous. I'm a little bit envious of you because you did it at a much younger age. I'm a couple years older than you. So I know, and we can touch on this. I know from having friends who have traveled at a much younger age how much that has impacted them and made them much more mature for their age than a lot of their peers. And so again, that's incredible that you started doing that. So take me let's continue on with the journey there, like packing up all your stuff. Like did you do research on all of this, or did you just kind of like just pack everything up and hit the road?
Yeah, well, I did research. I did some initial research, but it wasn't a lot. So, sort of in the middle of what you just said, I found the middle between those two sort of extremes. And so I just knew that I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to drive 14 hours in a day. I didn't want to no need to do that, right? Like I can take my time. So from Orlando to New Orleans, I think it's like an 8 to 10 hour drive or something like that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
said, all right, New Orleans is the first point in this trip. And then I saw that Austin, Texas was sort of like around the same similar type of, drive from New Orleans. So I was like, all right, Texas is the next one. Boom. I've always wanted to go to Texas. This will be great. Have some barbecue. It would be awesome. And so that was the next one. And then I think Arizona, I had a friend in Phoenix. So I was like, all right, I'm going to drive from Austin to Phoenix is like it's like a long way. And the only town that is in between Austin and like Texas is El Paso and Tucson. So I decided I'm going to go to El Paso next, which was a really cool city by the way, which is I mean just crazy that they split that city in two. One side is on the Mexican border and one side is on the American border. So El Paso is actually one half of a major city that is just happens to be on the American border, and Juarez is the other side of El Paso, and that is on the Mexican border. Fascinating. And then I went up to Arizona, visited my friend in Phoenix, and then from there I went to Los Angeles, stayed there for like a day or two, and then I freaking went right up the coast, right at the PCH, the Pacific Coast
Mm.
Highway, to San Francisco, and it was like I remember I went to California with my friend with my family back in high school, and I loved it. We did the Pacific Coast Highway. I was like, I want to do that again. I've always wanted to do that again. I want to do it by myself. I want to like have the windows down, playing like Kenny Chesney or whatever, and listening to music. And I did that, and I arrived. I'm so extra, John. I arrived in San Francisco on July 4th. On July 4th, I made it a big thing. I was like, yes, this is awesome. Freedom, independence. It means like everything is, the stars are aligning perfectly. And so I had such a great time in San Francisco for 2 months, 2.5 months. I fell in love with that city. I was like, I would live here in a heartbeat if it was less expensive and I could afford it. I would live here in a heartbeat. It's a beautiful city and totally gets a bad rep in the media, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I stayed there for 2.5 months, and then I started my road trip back to Maryland. This all took me 5 months, by the way, from when I left Orlando to when I arrived back home in Maryland. And so I went up the coast. I went to Portland. I went to Glacier National Park in Montana.
Wow.
Camped there for a few nights. I heard wolves howling. It's amazing at 3 a.m. That's harrowing, and then I went to state camped in Yellowstone National Park, which is in Wyoming, right beneath Montana. And then I went to Salt Lake City, Utah, and then I went to Denver, Colorado. And then and then I talked to my sister about this recently. This is a crazy thing that happened to me. I drove from Denver, Colorado, straight to Maryland. Okay, and so
Oh my
if
God.
anybody like wants to go and do the math on that, it took me. I left Denver at 8 a.m. and I arrived in Maryland the next day at like 4 or 5 p.m. Okay. So it took me like, how many hours is that? Like 32 hours or something like that. I stopped for 3 hours at a rest station to sleep, but I did that trip in one go. I don't know why. I think I was surprising my parents or something, but that was a heck of a drive. But my wrestling, my wrestling pea brain kicked in and was like, "You're gonna do this, Tom. We're gonna get through this here. You've wrestled, you've been through worse with wrestling." And so I had fun. I really enjoyed it, and I felt free as a bird. And I got home in Maryland 5 months after I left Orlando. And this leads into my blogging stuff because that's when I started to take blogging more seriously, and that's when I started the Post-Grad Survival Guide, and that's when I said to myself, "Look at all I've done. Look at everything they tell you that you're supposed to be doing. Look at everything. Look at all the ways that people typically live, and then look at some of the stuff that I've been able to do that I didn't think I'd be able to do because everyone tells you this is the way you're supposed to do it. And so I didn't even have like confidence in myself. I just sort of said, "Why not? Let's see what happens." And I was young and stupid, and luckily it worked for me. Honestly, I think I was stupid. No sane person would do that. you know, like I'm looking back on it now. I'm like, yeah, I probably should have done that. But um, I had all these lessons to write about. I loved writing, and I started the post grad to write about all of them. So, yeah, I'll stop there.
Incredible.
Next
Incredible, man.
chapter.
So
Yeah,
so as
I'm sorry.
you so while you were traveling, you were just focused on traveling 100%. Like, was there any time for you to explore your creativity with writing? I imagine you were probably still journaling too, like whenever you could, but there wasn't much publication at that time. Am I right?
Yeah, there wasn't much blog post writing. I was working on my business. I was actually working for this one company in like a email marketing position. I was helping their clients with email marketing, and it was a full-time position. So I was getting paid like, I mean, $15 an hour, which fine with me. I mean, paying for gas in California on $15 an hour ain't exactly, a treat,
Right
but,
out of college, man,
at
like
least
just
I was,
making that much is good, right? And you're working
yeah,
remotely.
exactly.
That's nice.
Exactly, exactly. So I traded all that stuff, and I thought it was more than a fair trade. I was over the moon about it. And so, but yeah, I worked with this company for a while, and when I went on that trip, it's interesting because, you know, a lot of times you think that something is going to take you this long and it ends up taking you much longer. And so it actually cut into my work. I had to drive into places, get there, fall asleep, and then start to like get on morning calls with like the rest of my team. And morning calls typically happen at 8 a.m. Eastern. The problem is, as you drive further out west, you're waking up earlier and earlier because it's 8 a.m. Eastern is 6 a.m. Eastern, for you, or 6 a.m. for you. And then when you're
Yeah.
in California, it's 5 a.m. in the morning. So like you're not only like you're battling the time zones, and then I don't know how I made it happen, to be honest, John. It was just a crazy thing that it was a crazy experience. I remember like I got in to San Francisco on July 4th, and I'm going off on a tangent here. I got in at July 4th in San Francisco on July 4th. I went out and had a ball with my friends. We were drinking. We were having a great time. We like went out and saw the fireworks. We ate at like this diner late at night, like on Fisherman's Wharf or something like that, and we had a great time. We drove back at like 3 a.m. from Oakland, you know, across the Bay Bridge, and I got in at 4 a.m. and then I started working like right like an hour later. I was like,
Oh
oh
my
man, I
god.
should have done that, and
Yo, man, that's that
so
that's that 20-year-old energy, man. Like that's that 20 something energy where you're just like go 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 go. Like you can just do it when you're in your early 20s.
for sure, man. And like it's so funny because now if I ever like now if I drink like even just a little too much, if I get tipsy, John, I wake up the next morning with a headache. It's like I didn't even get hammered, like, like I'm just tipsy, like so I don't drink a lot or anything like that nowadays, but if I'm with my friends and we're having a good time, I can feel the effects much more than I did back in the day. And so back in the day, meaning like just 5 years ago, I mean, it's not even like it was 30 years ago or something. And so, yeah, I've definitely felt my body change, with how much it can take and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's how I was able to, travel and do all that kind of stuff when I think, how old was I? Like 23. Yeah, 23 years old. So, yeah,
Yeah, man. Again, you got a lot of that. You get a lot of that energy. I think when you're younger, like I'm 34 now. Look, I even just had to think, how old am I before I said that. I'm 34 now, and I'm starting to feel it in my body. Like I can't. I'm similar in the sense where I cannot, you know, have too much to drink these days. Like maybe a glass of wine is good for me, but that's pretty much it, man. Um,
yeah.
so you go back to Maryland. Now you start this publication on Medium. Um, I mean, tell me about that experience and what led you to choose Medium as, for lack of better terms, your medium.
Yeah, true. Um, so I actually followed this one guy. I wanted to get into copywriting as a freelancer, and I followed this one person's newsletter about, copywriting, gave copywriting tips and stuff. And so I was subscribed to it. And in one newsletter, he talked about Medium, and he was like, "You should look at Medium. Everyone reading this should just take a look at Medium.com." And that's the first time I had ever heard of it. And so I decided to, when I got home, take a real close look at Medium. My WordPress, I started a travel blog on WordPress at findingtime.com. And so I wasn't getting any traction there. And I thought Medium is a platform. It's a true platform full of other users and stuff. There's already eyeballs there. So it only makes sense that, I'd publish there and maybe get more eyeballs on my work. I just wanted my work to be seen. And so I took his advice and I got started on Medium.com, and started a publication called the Post-Grad Survival Guide. If you ever watch like Nickelodeon, they have this show called Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. So I don't know why that connection was made in my pea brain, but it was, and so I decided to call it the Post-Grad Survival Guide, specifically targeting, you know, life lessons for millennials, for kids that just graduated, that feel lost in life, that feel like they can't do anything, that feel a lack of freedom, that need a little bit of inspiration, and things. And so I decided to just write about my travels, write about what I learned on my travels, write about the political differences between California and Maryland, and just like all these different weird, amazing things that I learned, that you can really only learn if you travel. And after like 30 days of publishing on Medium, I published one blog post every day. My publication started getting like 25 followers every day. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of people sort of interested in this, and Medium's giving me followers. Like, this is cool. This is awesome. I'm finally getting a following, and so I just kept going. And my views were like 1,000 views in the month for the first month. The next month it was like 2 or 3,000. The next month it was 5,000. So I was growing my following, and people were reading my stuff and following me, and I was addicted to it. I was hooked to it. I don't care if I was getting 30 views a day or whatever. I was happy. I was happy as could be that anyone was reading my stuff. And so, I wrote about productivity. I wrote about, like with freelancing, working, relationships, keeping your friendships alive, your family, even like romantic relationships. I wrote about that sometimes, even though that wasn't really my forte. And then I wrote about traveling and general life lessons, just general things that I learned on the road, and in my life so far, in wrestling, working at Disney, traveling in the United States, all that kind of, going out on my own as a freelancer. I had all this stuff to talk about. And so that was my place to talk about it. And after like 3 months, I actually had a Green Beret message me and say, Tom, like, I got this story for you. I want to submit it to you. Would you take a look at it? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so he sent it in to me, and it was a just amazing story about him being a Green Beret and what they learn and how they're trained. And it's just fascinating. And I was like, wow, like someone actually wants to publish with my publication. This is super cool. And so I opened up, the pub for submissions, and we started to publish, writing from other authors and writers on Medium.com. And that was about 3 months after I got started on Medium, which, 3 months after I got started was like December 2016. I got started in October 2016. So yeah, Medium was just such a great place from the get-go for me, and that's how I got started there.
Man, a lot of rapid success there. Very early on, and just
Yeah.
taking a leap into something. That's really cool, man. So I want to touch on just the transition or the continuing journey on the road. Now, what was it that inspired you to finally make the leap and go abroad?
Yeah, this is I guess I'll get a little personal here because this is really the reason why I went abroad. I When I was in Salt Lake City. Okay, here we go. We'll take you through this whole story, John. I love Tinder. I think it's a really interesting tool to get to meet new people. And when you're in a new city by yourself, you can sort of meet new people. And I don't have any like thoughts about what's going to happen or anything. I'm just like, all right, I'm going to go like meet some new people here and see what happens, and hopefully I can make some friends. I was looking at it more like a friendship thing. And so I actually like matched with this Filipina girl in Salt Lake
Okay.
City, in Utah, no matter how cheesy that is. And we hung out the first time, and we really kicked it off. I really liked her. I thought she was really cool. She introduced me to some of her friends. I think a couple days later, I went to her like apartment, and she was living with like 5 or 6 other Filipinos there. And I really loved them all. I thought they were so great. They were talking Tagalog the whole time. I knew how to cook caldereta, so for my friend in Orlando, she taught me. And so I said, hey, like, could I cook you guys caldereta, and we'll see what you think of it, whether it's whether it's authentic or not. And they're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I cooked it. And like I remember the girl that I sort of matched with, who was really cool. She like took the spoon and she took the sauce and she tasted it and she was like, "That's caldereta." And when she said that, I was like, "Yes!" I was like, "Yes, I got it right! Like this is awesome," you know. And so I actually sort of developed a relationship with her over the course of the year after I left, Salt Lake City. I actually stayed in Salt Lake for another week. I was supposed to stay there for 1 week. I extended it to spend more time with her. I was having a lot of fun with her friends, and we had a good time. We like met each, like sort of like had a sort of like this friendship, and she was working in America on a visa, and so her visa expired like a year after I met her, and so she flew back to the Philippines. And around the same time that sort of she flew back, I started to develop a business, an online course business, where I was starting to make more money on my own with my own thing. And so about 6 months after she left and my business sort of like developed more, I decided like I'm gonna come visit you in the Philippines. My best friend who lived in San Francisco, he was a Filipino. Um, my my really good friend in Orlando, she was a Filipina. You know, this girl that I met in Utah, she was a Filipina. Like I think the universe is telling me I need to go to the Philippines, So I went to go visit her, and I had a great time. She lived in General Santos City in Mindanao, and I went and visited her for a month, and then we went to Bali together because I always heard stories about Bali. It's overrated. And then we went to Vietnam, which is not overrated. Vietnam is super cool. And then she flew back to the Philippines, and I flew back home to see my brother get married. But that's what took me abroad, overseas originally. Yeah.
That's an incredible story, man. And there's a lot of things that I could touch on there, especially in regards to the use of a dating app to meet people. I totally agree with you. I know this is probably a little bit off tangent, off of the off topic of the topic of content
Yeah.
creation, but that's how these conversations go. That's what I love about doing a podcast. And so I totally agree. I think especially now in this day and age of of COVID and this pandemic and whatnot, like I think if you can find ways to just think a little bit outside of the box, I mean, the main goal is still the same, to meet somebody and to just, potentially become friends with them, or if there's something more, then that's great. But I really like that mentality that you showcased and highlighted there. I think that's really like one of the better ways, I think, in terms of meeting people. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's fascinating. So you went to General Santos City, the home of the great Manny Pacquiao. So
Yes.
what else? How
Yes,
was that
sir.
like?
Well, it's funny you mentioned Manny Pacquiao. I actually got to meet him when I was there. He was in his mansion,
Wow.
and so yeah, so this girl that I knew, there's just where does the the well end here with all these little things that I'm talking about? n-
I hope it
this
never
girl
ends,
that I
honestly,
was
Tom. Like you could just keep
no,
going, man. Like we could keep
no,
talking
no.
here. You got like a lot of great stories here. So continue on, my friend.
Well, look, these are the highlights of a life. These are the highlights of my life for the past couple years. There's a lot of boring moments. I'm a shy person, actually. I'm quite a shy person, so lot of other stuff that happened to me. That it's not all like butterflies and rainbows and stuff. But yeah, I did get to meet Manny, and he was super cool. The girl that I was dating at the time, she sort of knew one of his nieces or nephews or something like that. And he was like, "Yeah, you want to meet Manny?" And I was like, I don't know, because I'm scared to meet Manny Pacquiao. I mean, he's like, the second highest paid athlete in the world. Like in 20, I don't know what year it was, and I was like, he's like an international superstar. Like, what do I say to this guy? And so I actually got to go meet him. I got to go into his mansion in General Santos, and he was actually playing pool with a couple friends, and he's a really good pool player and really good at basketball too. He's
Yep.
a renaissance man, for sure. And so, but yeah, he was like came over to me, shook my hand, smiled at me, asked me what my name was, where I'm from, why I'm why had I visited the Philippines and stuff. And then I was so shy. I was starstruck. I didn't know what to say anymore. And so that was the whole, that's the whole thing. So I met Manny. That was great. And but yeah, I was really just blown away when I stayed in Jensen, like how beautiful it was. When you even when you're just driving on like the main highway, going to Davao or visiting some other places around General Santos, like it's just a really beautiful place. It's just so much green. Like I think it was like the coconut trees, like seeing the rows of coconut trees on the sides of the road, like just perfectly lined up, beautiful. Um, Everything is just super natural there. It seems people living at one with their environment, and there's this tropical beauty there that you just cannot get in America, no matter where you go. Florida, you could maybe get a little bit of it, but just at terms of like just sheer green, like on both sides of the road, spreading out as far as the eye can see, and sunshine, and all these sounds and smells and sights like this, like this guy on a tricycle, uh, having like I saw this one guy. He had like a bunch of rugs stacked on top of one another on a side cart, and they were literally like twice the size of him sitting down. So imagine he's sitting down riding it. Like they were like this high, and they were like sort of like tilting off to this side. And I'm like, how is he doing this? This is ridiculous. But somehow they make it work, and they know what they do things that you're looking at it, you're like, how is this possible? And so yeah, I had a lot of great fun there, and saw a lot of great things. I got introduced to a lot of amazing people, and I learned what it was like to be in the Philippines, and what it was like to be at a Filipino party, everyone passing around the shot glass, drinking, having a good time, talking, and there's like that's such a cool moment, like just sitting in a circle, sort of drinking, talking, laughing, all that kind of great stuff, and yeah, I had a great time in Jensen for sure.
So how long overall have you spent in the Philippines in your entire life?
Yeah, so I think it's been about 2 years. So I spent a month there, originally in 2018, in May of 2018. And then I went home. I went to Bali in Vietnam. I went home for 3 months. And then I bought a plane ticket to come back to the Philippines. And I stayed there in the Philippines for, I think, 6 or 7 months. And then I flew back home again because I needed to go see my brother. He was graduating from the Air Force Academy. And a month later, I flew to Europe to go see what Europe was all about. And then I flew from Spain to Manila again. And I stayed in Manila for a year and a half. And that was in the middle part of 2019. I arrived in the Philippines for the third time. And then COVID hit. And then I was, in lockdown in Manila for the whole last year. And yeah, so all in all, it's been 2 years, spread out across, I guess, 3 different years, So yeah.
Are you fluent in Tagalog now?
Hindi. I'm not. I'd like I know like some words, it's funny because like spending so much time around Filipinos, obviously you're going to catch on to their catchphrases, and you're going to ask them like, what's that mean? And then they're going to tell
Yeah.
you, and then you're going to sort of know a lot of the things that they typically say, and a lot of the words they typically use. And so if I'm listening to Filipinos talk, I can pick out certain words that they're saying where I know that they're talking like this person has something, or I could pick out verbs and stuff like that, but I'm not fluent. I have a hard time speaking it. I make all these
Yeah.
mistakes when I speak it, but I understand it. I think I understand it much better than I speak it. So yeah, Tagalog is a really cool language for sure. I actually have Rosetta Stone. I'm trying to learn it these days. Um, so I'll update you on that. I'm not really that great with it yet, so yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, I didn't even mention this to you before we started this conversation, but I am actually Filipino American. So this is part of what the
Yes.
fascination here with having you on the podcast is. But at the same time, I imagine too, like there's Taglish, right? Tagalog, English. There's hybrid. People are speaking both language at once. So that probably it's one of the few countries I think in the world that do that. Like you don't really hear, I mean, like Mandarin and English being spoken together. So I imagine that's had to help you in terms of like the communication aspect.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I definitely sort of like, I mean, even like there is Taglish and like there is like certain words where you're like, oh, that's an English word they just said, or that's an
Yeah.
English phrase that they just, shoehorned into something that they just said. Even when you're watching Filipino movies, like I like to do that because I can sort of use that. I like to watch Filipino media anyway, but it's like I also like to like watch it for like the language and learn any cultural things that I might not have known about before and stuff. And so, but yeah, every now and then in a Filipino movie, they'll just be like, "Here's an English phrase." It's like comes out of nowhere. It's like, "Wait, why are you speaking English?" you know. So I mean, I like it. Thank you. That helps me out as the viewer. But I'm thinking like, why? Um, but but yeah, I had a lot of fun learning that language, and I hope to become fluent in it one day, for certain. And I'm trying to get there. So it's just hard for my 27-year-old brain to it's so much better when you're younger learning these languages, but now it's so difficult for me, I find, so yeah.
Incredible, man. So I want to ask you also about just around this time period, right? Like when you were in the Philippines, this is when you started to get into video creation, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I think I actually, how extra I am, John. So I started my vlog on my birthday in 2018, about 2 months before I went and left for the Philippines. And so I started my vlog then, and I talked about what I wanted to accomplish with it. I originally wanted it to be a daily vlog, sort of like Casey Neistat style
Mhm.
vlogs, just about my daily life and stuff. But after I got to the Philippines, I started to make different kind of content. And obviously, I mean, everything that you do becomes content. It seems like, you know, and I think that can be used as a tool for good, and it can also go too far, and that's a whole other thing we could talk about too, John, is like I see a lot of times people um, make content out of something that they shouldn't be making content about. It's like, no, you should let them that person keep their privacy, or you shouldn't talk about the life lessons you learned from someone's death. No, you shouldn't talk about that. Like, let them rest in peace. Certain stuff like that. I digress. So it's only natural that I decided to start making videos about the Philippines because I live there and I was noticing things and I wanted to talk about certain things. And one of the videos that I made that originally sort of went sort of viral was this video the headline was Mindanao is not dangerous. So, looking back on that, I should have maybe tweaked that headline a bit. Um, but what I was trying to say was, there's a lot of like when you go to the Philippines, Mindanao is this island. For anybody who's watching who doesn't know, Mindanao is sort of like the southernmost island in the Philippines, and it's quite large. And so
Mhm.
there's actually been some terrorist activity in Mindanao, in Marawi to be exact. And so the whole island sort of gets a bad reputation. And even when you buy a ticket to go there, like there's travel advisories, like do not go there. Like we recommend you strongly do not go there. And so when I'm an American, who's never been to the Philippines, looking at that, I'm like scared to death. But I had my girl who I met in Salt Lake City. She was like, "It's fine, Tom. It's fine. Just come here. You'll see checkpoints, but it's fine." And so sure enough, I went there and had a great time, and I felt completely safe. There was like no fighting. It was like, it's just like people just living their lives. So I made a video about that and how like there's this, you know, it's not quite what they say it is in the media. Like Mindanao is not that dangerous. There's just a lot of people out living their lives, and I felt safe as an American. I'm a walking target, for like anything to happen to me. You know what I mean? So, and I felt completely safe, and so I made a video about that, and I think it got like 100,000 views or something like that, and I'll never forget that the shares going up and stuff, and I was just like, whoa, this is so cool. Like, I basically wrote a blog post, but excuse me, I made a video. And
Mm-hmm.
so I started to think about, what if I write my scripts before I make my videos, so I can get my ideas out in an entertaining way, in a logical way, and then make my videos and see what happens. So in some ways, my YouTube channel, my Facebook page was just like a visual blog. And then after I started to make more content about the Philippines, I was like, okay, well, I should probably like keep making content about the Philippines because my audience is from there, and I have a lot to say, and I've had friends from the Philippines for a long time. I've been interested in the culture for a long time before I started vlogging. The reason why I'm in the Philippines in the first place is because I'm interested in the Philippines, you know? And so I just started to make more videos about it. And I went down that rabbit hole. And it wasn't until a couple years later where I started to feel guilty about that for a few reasons that we could get into if you want to. But I felt guilty about making content about the Philippines later on because I saw how some creators, myself included, to be completely honest with you, were sort of using Filipino content to get more views, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and without really, I mean, I cared about the Philippines, obviously, but like, I don't know, a lot of it seemed disingenuous. And so, you know, anyway, I'm going down a whole other rabbit hole there, John, um, but yeah, that's when I started, making videos about the Philippines back then.
Yeah, there's like a couple things I'm like trying to make mental notes about in terms of what I want to ask you. But since we're already going down this route,
Yeah.
let's touch on it because I think I remember when I reached out to you, this was what I had brought up. I had come across your video about the concept of Pinoybaiting. I subscribed to this great newsletter called The Loop, and they had shared it as one of their links. And I read the Medium article and then saw your video about it, and it was so fascinating to me as somebody who works in marketing. Um, that concept, and it makes total sense to me. Like what is going on there? Like because and people who are not necessarily from the Philippines, they may not know this, but the Philippines has historically been one of the most technologically engaged countries in the entire world. I can remember going to the Philippines with my dad when I was a teenager, and they were by far ahead of us when it came to texting. Like they were always texting, always on their cell phones. So as technology has evolved, obviously like their engagement with technology has also grown more attached as well. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is Filipinos are constantly on their phones looking at Facebook, looking at social media. And so you brought up this you pointed this out and brought this to light, is this concept of Pinoy baiting and creating content that really targets that Filipino audience, because there's a knowledge there that, hey, all these Filipinos, they're always on their cell phones, and we know that we can pop off, we can get like 1 million views because like 1 million Filipinos are gonna watch this video.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that's sort of where I actually sort of read a tweet by this person on Twitter called Ma Buendia, and he sort of talked about Pinoy baiting and talked about what it was and how, foreigners and media companies like Netflix even will sort of pander to a Filipino audience just because they know they can get more views, because they know that, so like there was this whole controversy about I think Lucifer, this show Lucifer on Netflix. There's
Mm-hmm.
this one scene where he's speaking Tagalog, and a lot of people were sort of saying like that's Pinoy baiting. Like Netflix knows that people in the Philippines are, they probably have a lot of people in the Philippines who are watching Netflix, and they're probably pandering to them, or there's maybe a market there that there's not a lot of Filipinos watching Netflix, and if they put this clip on social media, it'll get shared, and then more people will want to like get Netflix so they can see that particular scene, and whatever. And even with Money Heist, one of the main characters' names is Manila in the latest season, and so I mean, just little things like that. I don't, but the worst, I don't really blame Netflix for that, honestly. I think the worst parts are the vloggers who, make just blatant like pandering to the Philippines and to Filipinos, and they in their heart of hearts like don't really love the country that much, or they don't really care that much. And like this is such an interesting conversation to have because a lot of people feel a lot of different ways about this. And I think that at the end of the day, I think that there's pretty good arguments all the way around. Some people would say, well, they're still promoting our country. Okay. You know, some people would say they're still promoting positivity. Okay. That's good too. At least they're not being negative. At least they're not like putting negative vibes out into the universe. But it's sort of like if you say that, you sort of can't say, like, you want people to be genuine with you at all times, right? Like, if someone's lying to you, you're not going to like that. It doesn't matter what situation you're in, unless you're watching WWE. In that case, you're good with them
Yeah.
lying to you because it's all fake, you know. Um, but like, but like the presupposition that this stuff is genuine from these creators, um, I don't know. I feel like it causes some problems, and I feel like why do you care so much about people being genuine and real and truthful with you in every other aspect of your life, but when it comes to the entertainment you watch, you don't care. You don't care if they're not genuine. You don't care if they don't really care about you. And here's just one other little aspect to this that I think is interesting. Like when you have such a big audience, when you grow really big on social media and stuff, and you start to make money from your content, it sort of like becomes a responsibility for you as a creator to, like, I don't know, create positive change, you wield an audience of hundreds of thousands of people, sometimes millions of people. That's an incredible responsibility, and you sort of owe it to your audience, the people that watch you, to help them in some way because they helped you get to where you are. And like when you just, I don't know, it's hard. When I walk around the Philippines, I see, obviously you're going to see poverty and stuff. I see problems. I've lived there for like a couple years now. I love the country. I love the people there. I naturally want to help them. So like why wouldn't I talk about different ways that, maybe you could help someone or maybe raise money for, people in need, especially during the pandemic, or like raise money for people that have flooding because of like a typhoon. I don't know. I don't really see those creators doing that much. A lot of these Filipino creators doing that, and I feel like that's a problem. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Maybe I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but I just think that there's a responsibility that you should have as a creator, you know, um, and to help people in need, period, you know? So, yeah, I'll stop. I'll pause there for a second. I'll let you take it where you want to take it, John.
Yeah, there's so much there's so much there that we could touch on because like there one thing that I have tried to touch on with some guests and I want to keep exploring this with future guests and you brought it up here is this level of influence that you have, right? Like I mean doing the research on you, you have I mean, what is it? You have 50,000 Medium followers, 13,000 followers on LinkedIn, over 150,000 subscribers on YouTube, half a million on Facebook, and 21,000 followers on Instagram. A side note, my one of my old coworkers in Las Vegas actually follows you on Instagram as I was doing the research on you.
Sweet.
Um, he's Filipino too, by the way. And so
Yeah.
and then again, you have 2,000 followers on Twitter. Now, some people will say, a couple thousand followers, that's not that much. That's still a lot of people. There's a lot of people who, for whatever reason, they like what you have to say. They're interested in what you have to say. And there's like, is there, there's like a level, is there not like a weight or like a burden there on that note, right? Because like it's obviously opened up these like opportunities for you to go into the lifestyle that you have, but at the same time, like you're talking about and alluding to, people are now looking to you for to basically like form their opinion.
Yeah, that's an incredible responsibility that I sometimes don't even really think about that much, you know. Especially I really feel that weight with my videos more than my writing. My writing, I feel like, I reach a couple, you know, I reach a little bit of people every month and stuff with my writing, and that's really cool. But like my videos, I feel like I feel a lot of weight of responsibility there, and I never I I never sort of compromise on what I want to say in my videos either. Like, so if I really feel something a way about something, I say it, and it's just that recently I've gone through down this whole Pinoy baiting sort of rabbit hole, and I've wanted to sort of expose that and get that talked about more because I think that it's a little bit of a problem, and the only problem, I know we want to talk about the sort of the responsibility there, but just to clarify my position on the Pinoy baiting, like the only problem I have, it's not that they're making videos about the Philippines. It's not even that they're Pinoy baiting. It's just every now and then try to give back to the people that have supported you. You can make all the reaction videos you want about the Philippines. You can do everything you want to do. You can compliment the country all you want. That's great. But just like don't forget that like you're making money and you sort of owe it to them to like give that some of that money back to them, in my opinion, you know? Um, so if they did that, then I would literally shut up about Pinoy baiting like overnight. I would never talk about it ever again. Um, so yeah, I have a hard time with comments sometimes. I get into it in the comments with people. I am human. Um, it's an idea that I think is logical that I try to present in a logical way with each of my videos. And so when people don't watch it and then comment like, "What about this?" I'm like, "Well, watch the whole video because I do talk about that, and there's this whole thing and but weirdly enough, John, like sometimes I feel like I don't really feel like I am making much of a difference, and it's not that I don't know, I just can't feel it that much. I feel like when you talk about an opinion that someone disagrees with, they will typically like unfollow you or
Mm-hmm.
or something, or they'll like sort of like mute your page or something like that. Like on Facebook, I feel like people either want to listen to people that they agree with, or they want to mute people that they disagree with. And unfortunately for me, I've been people always tell me unfollowed, and they send me a message like unsubscribed. I'm like, then just unfollow me. Why do you have to like message like unfollow? You know what I mean? Like, are you mad at me?
Yeah.
Like, this is just my opinion about something. I'm not like trying to attack you or anything. And so, as creators, I've started to realize too that it's the way that you say something that's super important as well. If you want to change public opinion, you need to approach it very gently, especially a topic like politics or something. And my problem is I can be quite opinionated and quite arrogant as well, honestly, with some of my ideas. And I think that shot myself in the foot and defeated the whole purpose of releasing a few of my videos where I polarize the audience instead of try to show the other side a point of view that they might come to accept later on. And I really believe that you can get anybody to change their mind about something um, if you approach it the right way and if you empathize with them. And sadly enough, I have not shown that much empathy in my videos, um, uh, enough in my sort of more polarizing videos that I think I should have shown. And so that's a whole other thing too that you have to keep in mind as a creator. What do you want to do? You want to change opinion. You want to make an impact. You want to change people's minds. Good. You got to be gentle with that, in my opinion. And so other people might disagree with me, and that's great. That's fine. But for me, that's where in my experience, that's what I think.
Tom, where does that come from? Being very opinionated, because that is one thing that I have noticed about your content and you have alluded to it, is that you make very bold statements. And we've seen, I think a lot of people who are listening or watching this show, um, we have seen how that that the system or these platforms are kind of, they reward that kind of polarizing bold statements of opinion. But I found it so fascinating that, the first article that you wrote for HuffPost, and you mentioned this earlier, it was about introversion, and you mentioned how you are generally like a shy guy, and most people think, come on, that's BS, man. This guy out here talking about Pinoybaiting and like calling other YouTubers out and whatnot. How is he a shy guy? But I can understand it, because I would consider myself too. I lean towards that side of introversion, and people might think, oh, he hosts this podcast. He's probably like, super outgoing. Like, no, I like to keep to myself at times. But where does that come from? Like, and I did another thing fascinating too is I remember you mentioning earlier one of your favorite shows growing up, First Take, with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. I'm wondering if a lot of that, watching that show, like influenced you in terms of this path of being very open about your opinions.
Yeah, it's such a great thing to talk about too. That I might want to talk. I might want to write about this later on. I think First Take for sure is super fun to watch. You know, because you have two people disagreeing with each other vehemently sometimes, trying to get the edge, and watching that show is so fascinating because a lot of times I agree with both of them. It's like, how can I agree with both of you guys? Like, you guys both made amazing arguments. Like, like there's this common expression like, what would you choose if someone had a gun to your head? What would you choose? Okay, well, it's hard for me, even still with First Take. Um, so I think that the I don't know. I think when I am talking to people, I tend to be very agreeable. I don't want to have any problems. I want it to be really chill and relaxed. I keep my opinions to myself. I just want to have a pretty good time, you know. And I generally like people, you know. Um, but I always saw writing and video creation as, okay, it's my turn, you know. Like, I like to listen to other people when I'm with them. I don't like to talk about my opinions with people um, uh, when I don't know, when I'm just hanging out with everyone. I don't want to cause rifts. If you agree with me, then I'll talk about my opinion. But if you disagree with me, that's when I listen. And I like listening because then I can understand where you're coming from. And then I can write about that later on if I ever have a problem. I don't need to engage someone in verbal or logical, let's say logical combat. I don't need to do that. I can do it in my writing because chances are that when I am given a 2 hour, 3 hour period to properly write out all of my thoughts and make sure that everything is perfect to the T, and I agree with everything I just said, then that is where I find my joy. And I think it gets back to journaling a little bit too, John. Too, like that's when I started to write down my opinions and my ideas, and I got all of it out before I sort of unleashed it like the plague on my friends or something. And I got mad at my friends for no reason. It's just because I had a bad day. I wrote it down in my journal and I told my journal about it. And my journal was like my punching bag. And so the opinionation, I guess, it, it's hard to tell. My family's pretty opinionated as well. My dad's very opinionated. At dinner table, we're talking about politics and stuff, and like a lot of times you can't disagree with your parents, right? And or else they're gonna might get upset with you. So my parents are great though. But I sort of kept all my ideas to myself, and I'm sort of bursting at the seams with them sometimes, and I think that I have this need for validation as well, for self-validation, and I think that I should try to find that somewhere else. But when I release an idea out to the world, I don't know. I'm also a big proponent of honesty. You know, being completely 100% transparent and honest. And so I try to just be as real as possible um, when I discuss my ideas. You know, but it's weird because when I talk to people, I don't reveal my cards. I'm not always like super transparent with them, but it's not because I'm not lying. I'm just listening to them. So there's so many different things, weird things with my personality. But if I had to point somewhere, I would say definitely my family. We're just that's
Yeah.
how we are, I guess. You know, yeah,
Well, I think there's a lot at stake too when you are expressing your opinions in like a one-on-one conversation that we're having, right? Because as human beings, we will regress to the lowest common denominator, I think. And especially if somebody says something that irks you or upsets you, that you don't agree with, you'll get emotional. And then next thing you know, you're yelling at each other and then you're not listening anymore. And so it's it's a problem that I think that we have in our country here in the United States, but worldwide as well, where a lot of people you hear about it like the echo chambers, right? Of just wanting to only listen to what they want to hear, and it's really, and I had a feeling that you would feel this way too because you have traveled quite a bit, and I know that from my own experiences of traveling that that opens you up to seeing the world from a very different perspective. That the way that you do things in your home country can be totally different in another country, and both kind of lead to the same end result, right?
yeah. When I grew up in Bel Air, Maryland, here on the East Coast, uh, I grew up here my whole life, and everyone sort of thinks the same way. And then you start to think, okay, well, everybody thinks this way, you know. And as you travel more, you meet so many different people, and you see that like the places where, um, like the media that you might have been listening to, they say that like, these places are like hellholes or something, and you go there and you're like, oh, this is actually like a really cool place filled with like really cool people, and like yeah, their ideas might seem a little weird at first, but they actually have a point about a lot of things, and then you start to see everything differently. You start to like question, the ideas that you grew up with. You start to question whether you you start to question everything, you know. Um, and I think that being exposed to those ideas also helped weirdly enough fill my head with ideas and make me a little bit more opinionated about things. And you're right. I mean, we can get so lost in what we believe that we forget the main purpose we're debating in the first place, and that is to talk about our ideas, and hopefully get the other person to see our idea, or at least understand it, and plant that seed so that they can then make a decision days, weeks, months, years later that maybe you were right, you know, and that's what tends to happen with my brother. Me and my brother, sometimes we have arguments and conversations and stuff, and I tell him something that hurts, and then days later he's like, "Yeah, Tom, I think you're right about that." It's like, okay, that seed, I just needed to plant the seed. And so, yeah, you always got to be careful of that, cognizant of that, I guess, when you're talking and debating with people and um, seeing all these ideas. Traveling is just, I don't know. There's this one quote, right? Like traveling is lethal to ignorance or something. It's something along those lines. I forget who said that. I think it's Mark Twain.
Hmm.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and nothing could be more true, in my opinion. And so, yeah, that's that's our match on. I think I went off on a tangent. I don't know where I am now, but but here we are. So
It happens sometimes. That's
yeah,
again
that's
why I
that.
like this. I like having these conversations because you just really never know
Yeah,
where the talks will go. It's a great
true.
medium. Honestly, I don't. You got all these followers on all these platforms. You got to get a podcast, man. This might be like the next phase for you is start a podcast or something.
Interviewing people is a lot of fun for sure. And yeah, I love listening to podcasts. You know, allowing someone to have all this time to talk. I mean, we've talked about, you know, dozens of things today that I could write blog posts about, you know. So I love this. I don't think about these things that much. I'm always work, work, work. So yeah, I totally agree. Podcasts are are a really cool medium, and that's why I love coming on and talking about this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
For sure. For sure, man. I want to touch on as well, like you had brought this up a little bit earlier about dealing with negativity, dealing with critical feedback, criticism online. Like as your platform, as your audience starts to grow, now you're not only just dealing with like people who are fans of your content, like again, we were talking about there are people who disagree with some of your opinions that show up. What are there any practices or tools or anything like that that you try to implement or use to kind of manage your emotions when you see somebody reacting to you in a negative way?
Well, I think I've gotten a little bit better at this over the years, John, but like one of the things that helps me when I wake up in the morning, right when I wake up, I am like my worst self. I am not a morning person. I need my coffee before you talk to me because I'm bad. It's bad, and so um, I've just thought like over the past few years as I've made these videos, typically I release them in the morning. I schedule them to be released in the morning. And so like the first thing I do when I wake up is I look at the comments. And the probability that I'm going to fire back on someone with a freaking flamethrower in the comments is quite high in the morning. So, knowing this bit of information, I tend to like stop myself and be like, Tom, it's just you're in a bad mood because it's the morning. Go have something to eat. That person didn't mean anything by that. Like put your flamethrower away now. And so I started to like realize like certain things about myself that I think this might be good for people to hear. It's like just try to like try like if you ever find yourself, I mean, we're all not perfect. If you ever find yourself like engaging with people in your comment section or with negativity too much, try to think about like the environment or the time or like what you were doing when you started to engage in that, and try to like steer yourself clear of anything anything like that. So like Benjamin Franklin, one of my favorite people ever, he has this quote: "If your head is wax, don't walk in the sun." So meaning, um, for alcoholics, right? Like if your head is wax, don't walk in the sun. If you're an alcoholic, don't drive anywhere near a freaking bar. Like stay away from the things that you know are weaknesses for you, and that will help. And so I try to do that with like my with negative comments and stuff like that. But yeah, John, I mean it's just hard for me still. It really is. It's still really hard for me when you pour yourself into the videos so much, and it's the same people saying the same things, taking the same stances, and you see all the same people in the comments and stuff. Um, but I think recently I've tried to just really think about like what would my comment look like if it had empathy attached to it. Like, I gotta read their comment a couple times, and then if I'm angry and I start to write something, write the comment and then put the phone on the freaking table, and then come back 5 minutes later and pick it up and read it and say, do I really want to publish this? Do I really want to comment this? And if you don't, then change it. And I always change it when I do that. I always make it less barbed wire, more softened on the edges, more just more presentable, and hopefully something that won't make that other person angry as well. And so, yeah, take all that stuff into consideration. I would say if you're a creator and you deal with negativity sometimes, that really that those two things sort of really help me out. Yeah.
Yeah, giving yourself some space to just breathe and let it marinate for a little bit, and then as your emotions kind of settle, then you can look back at what you may have written or drafted up and say, "Yeah, I got to change that." I mean, I imagine like that's what you do as a writer, right? You're like constantly rewriting, editing, looking back at what you've created and saying, "Oh, wait, no, that's not the point that I was trying to make here. I have to rethink that or reimagine that in a different sense."
Yeah, well, and I also think that like even like if you need to, I'm a very sensitive person. I am. I'm a sensitive person. I think I'll always be a sensitive person. unless I try to go to talk to somebody about this, like seeking like a counselor, like talking to somebody at length about these sorts of things and having someone talk to you to sort of help you navigate why you might be reacting in a certain way could probably help as well. Like um, everybody in my family sees some sort of a counselor, and they said it's like the greatest decision they ever made. And I have yet to do that. And so I think that could be like a really cool thing to do as well. Just like find someone to talk to, and that could really be helpful to sort of. I think I have a lot of like just like unsolved things that like I don't know, weaknesses. Like I don't like weirdly enough like a lack of confidence in myself sometimes, like social anxiety, you know, um, sensitivity, and pride. And so I would love to maybe try to quell those things one day, and those certainly contribute. And I bet that talking to somebody would help me with that. So yeah, I definitely want to like urge people to maybe look into that as well. And there's no shame in talking to somebody. We all got problems. One of my favorite movies is Silver Linings Playbook. It's a great
Mm.
movie, and it's about mental health. And really, I think the main point of that movie is that we all have something that we're dealing with. We all have some mental thing that we're dealing with, whether that's anxiety or depression or sensitivity or pride or something like that. And I love that movie because it sort of talks about how we all have these things, and it's not taboo. It shouldn't be taboo to talk about mental health and stuff. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox, but I think that would be a good thing for people to do too. you know.
Yeah, I mean, for sure,
So yeah.
especially during this time, where people are isolated more, right? Like we haven't been able to go out and be with the people that we enjoy spending time with. I mean, it's incredible that we have the technology now. Like, you know, you are in a different location, I am in a different location. The way that we're able to meet through these means, but that's no substitute for like actual personal one-on-one contact. I mean, honestly, that's like one of the things that I miss the most about travel is like getting out there and being with people and like talking to them, having even just having conversations like this. Cause I feel like if you and I met on the road, we would be having this same kind of conversation just without, cameras and microphones and whatnot. um and so yeah, it's really important, and especially I think for a lot of creators because there is like this pressure involved, right, with like constantly having to make stuff. I had spoken to one other creator early on, in the first season of the Videocraft show, and he talked a lot about like the issues of burnout and how he deals with that and sometimes has trouble dealing with that. And you're there's so much resting on you as a creator to generate things, right? Because you're not only like the on camera talent, you're also like the producer, you're also sometimes you're the editor as well. And there's just a lot of like energy that goes into that can really like sap you, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think I sort of wrote about this just recently about like burnout, and like honestly, John, I'm not sure if I'm ever gonna. Well, I mean, I think I'm gonna make another video, but for right now, for the foreseeable future, I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna make another video anytime soon. I'm talking the next couple months. I'm gonna go to Brazil and do jujitsu for a while. I might make a video about that, but my journey doing jujitsu. But like, I am burned out with making videos. I'm burned out with that whole thing. It sucks that something that I was so interested in when I was a kid, and a medium that I was able to create a following around, has become this toxic thing to me. Um, but it's not because it's bad. It's not because you shouldn't be a content creator. It's just my personal thing. I've been doing this for years, and I've been writing online for years, and the amount of content that I put out, it's just getting to a fever pitch. It's like, what more do I have to say? I don't know what else I got to say, and for me, I'm okay with walking away from video for a while and coming back with a renewed sense of direction and purpose later on. And I'm not afraid to put it down. I'm not afraid to put the camera down, and so it's a little hard when your whole business revolves around content. I know that's something else you got to figure out. Um, but at the end of the day, nothing's. I don't know if it really gets that bad. Nothing's worth having your happiness zapped. You know. So yeah, that's what I would add to that little part of this conversation for sure.
Yeah. I think too it's like it's worthwhile to do it, maybe like you take a break for a while, then you come back refreshed, you have more energy, you're bursting at the seams with more ideas, like sometimes you just need to take a break and then like the ideas flow. Like personally for me, that's how I feel a lot of times when I'm writing stuff or creating stuff. Like you feel stuck and you're trying to force it. You're trying to force this idea to come out, and it won't come out if you the more you force, the more you push. But if you like step outside, go for a walk, or like even just take a nap or go to sleep, then you wake up and then all of a sudden like everything is there. And so I imagine like in your position, as you were alluding to, like you've been doing this for a while now and you've created so much. You've written thousands and thousands of words. You've created a ton of videos, and I'm sure there's lots of, you know, unreleased footage that got edited out, but hours and hours of filming and scripting in that process. And, maybe you just need to take this time to like decompress a little bit, and then you'll find that inspiration again, or the new things to create about. Because I think that this is just, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Like you can pause here, take a moment here, take a break here, and then come back at it. It's the story is not over. You're still writing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and that's sort of why I'm going to Brazil. I'm going to head out for Brazil in a month and go train, jujitsu for like 3 months. And I'm doing that because I'm in horrible shape right now in terms of my endurance and I can't even like go up a flight of stairs without, breathing heavy. Mr. Wrestler here, can't even walk up a flight of freaking stairs. And so I want to sort of like, think about my health, but I also want to hit the reset button. You know, um, I think that one little part of this that I think is really important is that you feel excitement in whatever you're going to do next. Like this world is depressing enough right now. Obviously with the lockdowns and COVID and everything. And I think we're going to get out of it soon. I think that we're seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel in a little bit here. Um, but like after this is all over, try to find something that excites you. What excited me in 2016 was the thought of traveling across the country. You know, what excited me in 17 was the idea of coaching my wrestling team, my old high school wrestling team, and I loved that. What excited me in 2018 was to go to the Philippines. You know, and so and what excites me now is to go to Brazil. And so when you are excited about the future, you'll find that you have a lot more energy and your creativity will be much higher. I think it'll be at a different level. And so, um, yeah, and you're also going to learn something new probably. If you're excited about something, it's probably because, I don't know, you're probably pushing yourself. I think that's a good litmus test for that. And so, as creators, I always say this: if you want to be a good blogger, do cool shit first. Like go do something cool. Go have an adventure. Go coach a wrestling team. Go, have a leadership position somewhere. Like volunteer. Like you don't have to travel. You could and just around but just like do something that pushes your limits, and then you will have something to write about naturally. And so that's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to hit the reset button, push myself, go to a country where I don't know a lick of Portuguese, go train with some of the best jujitsu martial artists, you know, in the world, and just see what the heck happens, see what I learn, and whatever comes of it, I think will be good things. And I'm willing to go through the pain because I've been through the pain before. And so I think, yeah, if you're having trouble with creativity, get excited about something and push yourself. And that's sort of like a red flag to you that, hey, I need to push myself a bit more right now, possibly. maybe not with everything, but possibly. So yeah, that's what I would say, John.
Awesome, man. Well, that's well said. And honestly, we've been talking here for more than an hour and a half. I want to thank you for your time here and being like very open and forthright about your experiences, not only as a creator but also in life. And honestly, man, we there's still so much more that I could talk to you about. Hopefully down the line we could do a round two and we can touch more on some of these other subjects and topics that I didn't get a chance to talk to you about today. So again, I appreciate you, man, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, John, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and we could for sure have a round two anytime you want. And really fun talking to you. Like, I don't get normally I ask the other person questions when I have a conversation with them, but with a podcast, you're sort of supposed to be the only one talking. So I'll talk to you about afterwards about some of the stuff that you've been through and everything. But nah, thank you so much. I had a lot of fun. I'm gonna write a bunch of blog posts. I'm going to write down some ideas after we get off, and I'll write about them. So yeah, I really appreciate the time, and thank you for having me on. Yeah.
Thanks again to Tom Kuegler for coming on the show. Really appreciate him for taking the time today. And before you all go, I've got a few quick things for you. First, find the show notes for this episode and previous ones over at www.videocraftshow.com. And second, for all the content creators out there that struggle to organize and script your ideas, I've got a resource for you. Get a copy of our free script template. It can help you structure your videos and save you hours of time from filming in the process. To download it, all you have to do is go to videocraftshow.com, or if you're watching on YouTube, find the link in the description below and just subscribe to our email list. It'll get delivered straight to your inbox right after you sign up. And third, if you're enjoying the show, make sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We're always trying to make the show better for listeners and viewers like you. So feedback, no matter whether it's good or bad, it's helping us to improve. So let us know what you think there. Finally, if you're watching the show on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us with the YouTube algorithm and gets this show in front of more content creators like you. And leave us a comment. We read every last one. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Finally, thank you to my team for helping me to produce the show. Shouting out Nikki Vicente, Rexa Stanislaus, Shara Texon, Chaco Arucan, Paulo Lopez, and the rest of the crew over at Video Husky. If you want your videos edited just like this, then visit videohusky.com to learn more. We'll see you next week on another episode of the Videocraft Show, presented by Video Husky.